Hello everyone. I would have done this recording in World War Z, but I'm on an AMD build, which means that if I do anything stressful, the fans kick into overdrive and it sounds like a jet engine. This normally wouldn't be a problem on 20 mic volume, but I've had to kick it up to 26 recently due to people saying that they can't hear me at that volume. This is unfortunate because I want to do my best to work with people, but it's putting me in a tough situation. Regardless, World War Z was or is on sale at Epic Games. When I noticed the sale, it was at 15 US dollars, but if you had a coupon through Epic, then it would have brought the cost down to $5. Thanks to this low cost, it is bringing in new players. With that in mind, I would like to go over the classes in terms of what they are to help new players. Then we will discuss what's viable at the max difficulty. Okay, so Exterminator is going to be your jack of all trades class. It has a good focus on firearms, but it also has some defensive abilities built into it. Fixer is going to be the support class after Medic. Fixer has a focus on protecting teammates and using semi-auto rifles. Semi-auto rifles are the second strongest weapon in the game, just based on raw stats. It's got 9 power on the battle rifle, I think it is, Hammer 17. That puts it 1 power less than a shotgun. You will notice Fixers very late using masking grenades, which are basically smoke grenades. So that's kind of how it protects or helps its team, is by masking grenades. Gunslinger is very straightforward, doesn't really require much of an explanation. Its focus is on firearms, nothing really special about it. Hellraiser is basically a combat engineer. It has a focus on shotguns and explosives. Medic is, Medic. It has a focus on submachine guns, but it does not have any damage skills for SMGs, really. So Medic can do the least amount of damage out of this group, because it's relying on submachine guns, which are low on power as is. Slasher is going to be your frontline class. It has most of its focus on melee weapons, control. Then it has at least 1 or 2 abilities related to submachine guns. Slasher controls the front line through melee, and its stun gun. Stun gun is the equipment it gets, just like Fixer gets masking grenades for its equipment. But Slasher's stun gun will disable even the big zombies for a certain amount of time. So that's why it's considered your frontline class. With the crash course in classes gone over, let's go ahead and talk about what's best for new people. I would say if you are wanting to really focus on firearms, then go Exterminator. Exterminator is great early game and even into late game. Thanks to its defense abilities and high damage, it's capable of dealing with all the difficulties within reason. If you are into support classes, then you need to think about what your gunplay is, because as I pointed out, Fixer is semi-auto and Medic is SMG. They're both important to a team, but it all depends on your skill rating with that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, what really matters is the skill of the person over the class. So kind of keep that in mind when deciding support. If you don't mind risking it for the biscuit, then Slasher is for you. Hellraiser is going to be a little bit more difficult than these other classes for a new person. This is in large part due to that focus on explosives. Its equipment is C4, which detonates a pretty large group of zombies. And later on it will get to start with the Hellstorm MGL. Both of these will absolutely decimate hordes of zombies in short order. Unfortunately, this does require you to be aware of the maps and try to plan for chokes. While the Hellstorm MGL and the C4 does a lot of damage, the problem is its blast radius isn't going to be large enough to get zombies that are spaced out. That's what you use your shotgun for. If the zombies are spaced out, then you want to use your shotgun if you can help it. But if they're clustered together in a really tight space, then you blow them up. Of course, there will be exceptions to this, and it requires knowledge of the game in order to know what those exceptions are and when to switch tactics. So that's why Hellraiser, in my opinion, is the least friendly to new players, because it takes quite a bit of time to actually understand what it is you need to do. I won't bother with Gunslinger, because while yes, it can help new players, the problem is it doesn't really scale that as well as Exterminator does into the later difficulties. So I would say anything but Gunslinger should be okay for starting classes, with the exception of Hellraiser, assuming that you are able to do that kind of stuff right off the bat. Okay, that's all the new player stuff. Let's talk about what's viable. I recently returned to World War Z after learning about Prestige and all the other stuff being added. I, of course, went online to read discussions about what people thought were the best classes for max difficulty. I will focus entirely on Hellraiser and Exterminator for this discussion, in large part because I don't see a reason to disagree with the current listings of classes. Right now, people are saying Medic is S tier, Fixer is next after that, and then Slasher's right after that. I can't disagree with that because I understand the logic between those three being towards the top. When it gets to the higher difficulties, even max difficulty, controlling zombies is important. So Slasher does a really good job with that, and of course Medic and Fixer help make that a bit easier or save your team in clutch situations. So again, I can't disagree. But Exterminator and Hellraiser is where people really start to debate with each other. Some people say Exterminator should be on the list. Some people say Hellraiser should be on the list. It's really hard for people to agree, is what I'm starting to notice. So, like I was saying earlier, it really is dependent on that person's skill, because a person's skill can trump the need for a specific class in certain circumstances. I think people can agree on that, even in these debates. So, Exterminator doesn't have really any CC to speak of unless you count shotguns. Shotguns actually do a really good job of clearing zombie groups or hordes because it has 2 penetration and 10 power. It just does an incredible amount of damage in short order. Exterminator gets to start out with the Take a 12 heavy shotgun, and later on if you prestige, it does get reload speed with shotguns. So if you're able to find, I think it's called the assault shotgun, while in a map, then you just switch between Take a 12 and assault shotgun, and that's how you clear hordes as Exterminator. It's a effective method for sure, because it just racks up kills. Hellraiser, on the other hand, has more of a defined crowd control. If you have the Here Kitty Kitty thing, I think it's called, that'll make zombies come to the C4. So that's going to be a lot more of a harder control than, say, shotgun. Later on, you'll get the Hellstorm MGL, which lets you just decimate zombie hordes, even more so than shotguns. Stack that with all of your other passives and to explosive damage, and it just gets out of control with what you can do between C4 and Hellstorm MGL. So there's that positive. If you run out of those two, then you can use shotguns, because Hellraiser does get shotgun reload speed. So obviously there's pros and cons between the two, and I think that they probably should both be on the list, with perhaps Hellraiser being higher on the list than Exterminator. That's just because, as I pointed out, Hellraiser has a more defined crowd control. It's also capable of blowing up a lot more zombies than the shotgun can, so the fact that it has those two supporting the shotgun means that it can clear groups a lot quicker than Exterminator can in certain circumstances. But again, if the person is skilled with firearms, then they can make it work with Exterminator. So yeah, it's a hard one to define, but yeah, I would say that Exterminator and Hellraiser are contested classes for max difficulty. Fixer, Medic, and Slasher are defined. They are up there in the list and always will be, unless something changed. But yeah, that's really the most I have to say. Thanks for listening.